Just look into the cellars of other people. You might find other families and girls down there.
You guys are a perfect match.
And that was Joseph Fritzl. And I'm Jen.
And I'm Becky.
And welcome to Too Close to Home. And you guys, this is it. We're ending it. Last part of Joseph Fritzl.
And also, FYI, if you guys don't hear from me in a week, Joseph Fritzl was here in Jennifer's bedroom making that recording. And if I am missing, look in their basement.
Look in my basement. When you find it, let me know, though, because I would love the storage space. Sure.
Just go open that door and look for it, right, Jen? Okay. You're not going to get me, okay? I'm on to you.
Not today. I did see a TikTok.
Not today, ma'am.
I did see a TikTok the other day I'm going to send you, and it was this girl and her best friend in Thailand, and this guy is tying something around her ankle, like she's standing on a bar and dancing, and it's in a club, and she's like, no, just me thinking it's cute, and he's just putting this around my ankle for fun, and my friend telling me that he's probably marking me for human trafficking. I'm like, oh my God, Becky would be the friend, and I would have it on my ankle.
Million times correct.
Now, if you told me, though, that you had an excellent business opportunity that would take me for the rest of my life, I'd say, get out of here, Avon. Get out of here, Sensei.
I'm on to the MLMs.
I'm on to you. Ain't no parables around, huh? So let's get out of the sources one last time. Secrets in the Cellar by John Glatt, Wikipedia, the Canadian legal system, the Scotsman, the Independent, Spiegel Story, the Telegraph UK, the Guardian, Spiegel International, Graphic News, BBC, Reuters, the Daily Mail, and Tidskrifta, which is the journal translated from German. I love saying Reuters. I don't know why I love this word.
I like when you say the last one. It sounds like tits.
Tidskrifta?
Yeah.
But every time we I like listening to NPR and the news on my little Alexa.
Nerd.
And we always try to like figure out because it's always the same people, like the same 4 or 5 people. It's like, hello, this is NPR News. Hello, this is so-and-so from Reuters. Sorry, guys. This is exactly what happens in my brain all day long. I literally, things have to be multiply happening. This is why I can't talk clearly. I'd be watching my below deck on TV while playing my old lady game, and then asking Jimmy multiple questions, and also asking for like water and stuff. So
yeah,
that's just like the that happens in my brain.
What seems like chaos to y'all, if it becomes calm and one thing going on, it's chaos to me because something's not right. There is only one thing going on.
I can handle this.
I need multiple situations at all time to feel relaxed.
Exactly. That's when I get in my zone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So last time we talked about Elizabeth's final years in the dungeon when she finally got out. So let's pick up on the welfare of the family and when they first come above ground. So, of course, the first thing they want to do is give a medical exam. And Elizabeth revealed just how much she had endured. She was weak and traumatized, malnourished, extremely pale. Her teeth were gone. Her gums were black with decay. Her hair was wiry white. Her bones brittle from the lack of sunlight. She was permanently hunched and walked with a limp, and her speech had also been affected. Felix and Stefan both had papery, white, thin skin like myself. Defective immune systems, also like myself. Anemia and vitamin deficiencies, again, like myself. That's why I have so many vitamins. It was all true.
Facts on facts.
So, sorry guys, this is so sad. I had to do it. I don't know why I didn't even think about that in one of my writing. That was just freeballing right out of my mouth. Okay. Stefan, who was an adult at this time, he walked with a stoop and he had awful spatial awareness. Also myself. Sorry. This is really rough. Having been too tall to comfortably walk in the dungeon, he also...
Not you.
Not me. I love my dungeon. That's where I keep my Becky.
That's right.
He also suffered loss of teeth like Kirsten. I guess he didn't bring them any toothbrushes or toothpaste because every single one of them, their teeth suffered.
Well, it's probably not even to do with the dental care as far as that.
It's just lack of vitamins and stuff. Yeah, that, and then also all they ate was processed. Now listen, I also ate a lot of processed food because I was a poor kid growing up. Okay, I do not like fresh green beans. I only like them out of the can. And maybe that explains why I have shit health.
Maybe.
Look at me, just having self-discoveries. So, he also suffered from some neuron disorders. Motor neurons are cells in the brain and spinal cord that allow us to move, speak, swallow, and breathe by sending out commands from the brain to the muscles that carry out these functions. So, like, because they had this lack of oxygen and lack of vitamins, that really did impair their speech.
What I've been thinking the whole time through all these episodes, too, of the stunted brain development.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the correct oxygen and vitamins, your brain does not develop and probably grow to the size that it needs to form the things it does. So,
also the lack of stimuli.
Yeah.
Felix was the most healthy since he was the youngest and had spent the least amount of time in the dungeon. So the doctors felt he had the strongest chance of a full recovery and that his older siblings probably wouldn't have. He did walk monkey style, though, and quite fast. But he also could walk on his legs, but it was just like something he did to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Their skin required extra strong prescription sunscreen. I do too. I have Neutrogena 100 SPF. If you think there isn't, it is, and it goes on like a paste.
I bet it does.
If you ever touch Destin, that's what Neutrogena's 100 SPF is. They also had to wear special goggles as their eyes were not used to anything above a dim light. So not even the TV screen light, basically. Rosemary would suffer a TB after hearing what Joseph had done, and she ended up being hospitalized. After being put in his cell, the district governor of Amstetten visited him in jail. He told him of how appalling his crimes were, and Joseph responded, "I feel sorry for my family, but it cannot be undone."
You know what? You're right, fam. Go ahead. Go on home.
He just ended up leaving. He was like, fuck this guy. Rosemary, the upstairs children, and Elizabeth with the downstairs children finally would all meet. Many of them were really worried about it because at this point, it was just Rosemary, Elizabeth, and the basement kids. So now you're going to introduce the ones that made it up top.
I'm sorry. You called them the basement kids.
Sounds like a punk band.
You just said so casually. This is horrible. I'm sorry, guys. This is fucking horrible.
But I have a really terrible sense of humor in the fact that you get me and you're not judging me for it. That's why you're my best friend. I did a hair flip for that too. They were worried actually about the division of children, the resentment that the downstairs children would have against the upstairs children, or that the upstairs children wouldn't want a relationship since they just learned days previously that they even had siblings downstairs or at all. Despite all the worries, they did all gather, and it went better than expected. Elizabeth stroked the faces of her children that were taken away. Her joy was just palpable. Felix was the most anxious one. While previously he was thrilled, but at this time, I'm sure he's like so overwhelmed.
Oh,
everything
absolutely.
had just kept stacking up. He just hung on to Elizabeth,
Yeah.
he couldn't do it. All the children did seem to enjoy each other, saying they loved each other. With the children downstairs clearly having mental and physical issues with their being underground their whole lives, Dr. Reiter and the rest of the medical professionals would take into their introduction to the world slowly, being careful not to force them too fast. Eventually, look at this deprivation. Look at me. I love these stories of deprivation. First of all, we get these people back from the, Donner Lake. Gotta reintroduce them. Gotta reintroduce children to the world. That's no small task. Eventually, doctors had to close off a whole wing of the clinic for the kids and Elizabeth.
I'm so glad, though, to hear how compassionate everyone is being to them.
Oh, yeah.
That is like the silver lining to it.
Honestly, it was like so astounding because like in America, you would have had a GoFundMe. You would have been on the news, maybe a presidential visit, and that would have been it.
Yeah.
They would have moved on to the next story. This one, they really did put a lot of the thought and care as both like government officials, local officials. It was insane. Besides them having a lot of sex dungeons, Austria sounds like they got their shit together. Unfortunately, sex dungeons are a make it or break it deal for me. Okay. I would say this is my sex dungeon that we're currently in.
Except when sex happens.
Yes.
So it's just a dungeon.
And so in that wing, they covered the windows to minimize the light as it was still too bright. The doctors also brought in a shipping container that would be somewhat similar in the dimensions to the dungeon, so if they got overwhelmed, they could go into there to kind of retreat. They gave Stefan a fish tank and brought items from the dungeon to help make their environment more emotionally comfortable for them. The staff at the clinic would throw a party for Alexander for his 12th birthday so that all the children and their mother and grandmother could celebrate together. They talked a lot, they were getting close, and then it was Felix's 5th birthday a few days later, and they celebrated that together as well, despite Felix just being super timid and holding on to Elizabeth.
Yeah,
They
sure.
really
Absolutely.
put a whole lot of effort in together. Joseph, in the meantime, would be brought back to the dungeon by the police. Despite their fears about the booby traps Elizabeth had spoken of, they followed him through the 8 doors into the dungeon, through the final 4-foot door. The uneven floors and low ceiling would host short, narrow corridors, rats, stagnant air you could barely breathe. Just a rotten dungeon that had been attempted to be brightened up by children's drawings, but still absolutely horrid. As they combed through the cellar and gathered evidence, Joseph was taken back to jail, fingerprinted and photographed, and then placed in his cell for suicide watch. The DNA test would come back, and to no surprise, he was the father.
Very Maury Povich.
Very Maury. Also, Jerry Springer, and if you haven't watched that documentary, you should. They were debating on all the charges, one being death through failure of act in the case of Michael. It was a very unprecedented case.
Yeah. Thank God. It's unprecedented. We don't
have this happen.
Yeah.
Well, except it had.
Well, yeah.
Their problems with those ice dungeons. The police would give a press release withholding her whole name and referring to her as Elizabeth F. They described her being imprisoned, raped, and raised children in the basement for 24 years. Despite not giving her name, they were quite open on the details of the case. They were still awaiting DNA samples when this came to light first, but they were like, yeah, he's for sure the father. It's kind of like there's not a huge crowd down there. Sorry, guys.
Possibilities are limited.
The home they lived in on Eve Strauss Street was a main shopping lane, and locals were horrified that they walked by atrocities unknowingly every day. Within hours of the news story breaking, the details of the case made it easy for the residents to put 2 and 2 together.
You think?
It reminds us that no one truly knows what happens behind closed doors, and that even the seemingly most respected can be evil and a deviant capable of unspeakable crimes. So, the home would become a macabre tourist attraction with many wanting to see it, including little Monica's class, as their teacher literally took them to go see the home so they would know what their classmate was going through.
That was a nosy bitch is what that was.
She would tell the press, well, there's no point in hiding it because it's all anyone's talking about.
Okay.
But did you? Others treated it as a memorial, and they held vigils and laid flowers for the family at their home. The news did get pictures of some of the cellar, with the exception of the rooms and the rubber padded rape room, as they did not release those. Somehow, the press got more photographs of him on his sex holidays and videos of him on the beach in his Speedo. They also uncovered his rape conviction and that it had been expunged, how he had been hired by a company in 1969 who knowingly hired him despite his conviction and prison time. They spoke to Rosemary's sister, Christine, who spared no words in her disgust to Joseph, his awful nature, how strange and violent he was. She would speak of his Nazi childhood and how his mother was extremely mentally and physically abusive. That Joseph was a tyrant who took those lessons from his mother and applied them directly to his own parenting style, or lack thereof, should I say. With Joseph's picture plastered on the news of his rape victim from all those years ago, recognized those terrifying blue eyes that she had seen. The young newlywed nurse that he had raped was now in her 60s and remained anonymous as Frau M. She described her rape and how she had awoken to a knife at her neck. She said this to the news. The police said at this point they were combing through and gathering all the sex crimes as far back as 1959, and that they were looking into other cases they suspected Joseph had a hand in as well. As recall, Lake Monsey is where his campgrounds were so many years ago, now having been sold off for some time. In 1986, a 17-year-old woman named Martina Posch would be found in the lake, naked, deceased, and wrapped in a green tarp. She was physically similar to Elizabeth, who would have been in the dungeon for 2 years in 1986. She had been brutally sexually assaulted as well. There were no concrete evidence of the murder, as they did not find any items Martina was missing, like her clothing or purse. The strongest link was really the campground and how he could have been there and that she was similar to Elizabeth. So one cannot say one way or another. And like many law enforcement, when a large case comes up, it's similar to your cold case. The details add up without strong evidence other than circumstantial. 2 other cases would actually be brought up. He would be looked as a suspect in the death of 17-year-old Anna Neumeyer. She was killed with a captive bolt pistol. You know what that is? It's what they use on live slaughter.
Oh, yeah, I do know.
In slaughtering, sorry. In
livestock in a
livestock
slaughterhouse.
slaughtering. There
Yes.
we go.
I knew what you meant.
She was found in a field in Linz in 1966. She had disappeared on her way to Wells, 35 kilometers from where Fritzl worked at the time. Another one was Gabriela Supkova. She was 42, a sex worker who was murdered in 2007. Her body was found in the Lipno Reservoir near the Austrian-Czech border at a time when Fritzl was on holiday there. But still, all we have is circumstantial. Austria itself had erupted into disgust, as well as many around the world. Between Natasha being found 2 years earlier and Elizabeth, it looked like Austria had a little sudden problem. Austria had to launch a PR campaign.
You think?
It didn't help that this happened right before they were to host the UEFA Euro Games, which would cast an even brighter spotlight on Austria. They brought in a special crisis PR representative, but regardless, Austrian citizens felt it was a little bit in bad taste and disrespectful to Elizabeth and her children. Natasha did speak on it, wishing them healing and luck, comparing it to her own experience. And that she felt that the Third Reich sexism and how they propagated oppression of women felt this was probably a direct result. And honestly, right now, you guys, I'm working on a story directly tied to World War II and Nazi Germany, and it's very much what they were doing. It was very much oppression of anyone who wasn't a white male.
Yeah.
So that's all you can do in this story.
Yeah.
By now, the authorities had combed through Joseph's finances and discovered all his financial misdeeds, and that in that point in time, he was at least $3 million in debt. And it was estimated it would take 8 years and at least $1.4 million to cover the medical and educational needs of Elizabeth and her children. A public fund did get created with celebrities and politicians endorsing contributions to help the family. Joseph was currently in a 10-foot cell, which was a mansion compared to Elizabeth's.
Yeah.
It had a TV, a radio, a stereo system, the newest magazines, the newest newspapers available, a clean and comfortable bed, a desk and bedside table and lamp. He even had a potted plant by his large window. He ate 3 square meals a day that was designed by a nutritionist with fresh vegetables and fruits.
Yeah, because prisoners deserve the best.
They do. He was terrified, however, because sexual criminals are the worst type of scum in jail standards, and they let him know it. They would yell threats at him, waking up at night, banging on the wall, yelling at him to keep him awake, going, "Hey, Satan, come on out. Let's play. I'm going to come get you."
I'm here for it.
Satan was the name his co-prisoners would call him. And they made sure he knew he was a piece of shit. And truly, I hope someone popped the cherry of his prison pocket on the first night. But it still wouldn't be equal to the horrific shit he did to Elizabeth. He enjoyed the shit out of reading about himself or seeing himself on TV, which is no surprise. Like many weirdos, he liked true crime. So he knew that he should hire a well-known defense attorney named Gruboff Meyer. I hate this guy. He's just weird. Okay. First of all, he was a ballet dancer who became a lawyer. And then he described himself as a self-proclaimed therapist lawyer.
Oh, okay.
He defended Elfriede Blauensteiner, and she was a famous Austrian Black Widow. Despite being unsuccessful in defending her, Fritzl was down for him being his lawyer. Meyer would describe their first meeting as a bonding experience.
I'm guessing he had few choices too.
Yeah, probably. He did not detect a negative aura like car thieves and criminals he had represented before, so he felt like they jived, you know? It's astounding how slimy a human can be, which I struggle to call Meyer and Joseph even that. Meyer would use the He was just taking care of his family, and you can't put this man the rest of his life. 15 years is the max, which is so wild. Like, sir, Elizabeth did 24.
Yeah. At a minimum, that's what he should do, and he should have to do it where she did it.
Exactly. With less. He would get death threats and such, to which he responded that he wouldn't get a security crew as he was a talented amateur boxer.
I'll get the fuck out of here.
That's what I said. You're a ballet man, then a lawyer, then
And
a therapist, then a boxer?
What are you not, sir?
Okay. The police at this point made a public plea for the previous tenants of Joseph's during Elizabeth's imprisonment to come forward so they could interview him. They were hoping that any of the over 100 tenants he had during this time had possibly seen something, anything, would come in for witness statements. And many of them did, with regrets that they saw odd happenings before and shrugged them off, now regretting they didn't do more. One stating an odd, offhand remark from Joseph that one day, 40 Eve Strasse would be famous. I mean, honestly, as humans, it's easy for us to ignore a red flag and assume shit isn't happening. The clues of food going into the cellar and wheelbarrows, the disappearing food, the unexplainable power leak leading to all the expensive light bills, and most commonly, that many had heard that Sissy, as she is known to friends, had been raped by her father and knew about his previous rape conventions, warning tenants of this. It was like an open, dark secret, the pedo of 40 Eve Strasse. They had 30 detectives and 300 officers working on the Fritzl case, gathering statements and combing through evidence. They would have a 4-man forensic team take turns processing the dungeon. And as you would expect, it was extremely difficult. A lack of ventilation, the mold, cramped conditions, it made it impossible to breathe. Even with all that, they could do like an hour at a time.
Well, first of all, sirs, they had to do it for 24 years, so I need you to shut the fuck up and get down there and get this
Could be an old bitch.
processed.
They knew that Elizabeth and the children, having no protective gear and living in this, had to be extremely taxing on their bodies, and that they would have probably been laying or sitting for the majority of their time due to the lack of oxygen. They would end up fixing up and adding to the ventilation system so that they could continue processing it without it being so fucking dangerous to human life. They had to alter a crime scene to make it habitable for humans who are investigating a crime of other humans who have been in that spot for 24 years. Those poor people. Sorry. I'm saying this like you're Joseph. Like, let me tell you what you did. They would bring in sonar and bloodhounds to locate more possible chambers to see if there were any more babies buried in the garden. By now, they had discredited his claims of toxic gas or a trap of any kind. Turns out that the dungeon that Elizabeth was in was only 1/3 of its actual size, and that 2/3 had been blocked off unbeknownst to her. And I was like, when I got to this point in the story, I was like, what the fuck? Like, the fact that he had the expanded dungeon and still had her and her children dig with the lack of ventilation. You did that because you're fucking cruel. You did that disgustingly sick entertainment. Like, that's horrifying. He kept a meticulous record of blueprints, plans. He kept detailed receipts of the work orders, anything he had done in that basement, including all his grocery receipts.
Something really wrong with this guy.
One would say. Forensic teams would find doors that only Joseph knew about, so they hypothesized that he had plans on expansion, and God knows how many more secrets there would be in the cellar. At this point, Joseph had refused to cooperate at this point. They did know the possible plans for an insanity defense, so they were meticulous to detail his organization and plans, something that an insane person would have trouble completing. Really. Yeah. If you're insane, you're not keeping your grocery receipts, baby. Okay?
All tidy and neat and
You're not coming up with a reason that your daughter cannot leave the basement with a figment of imagination tool. Like, come on, man. Kirsten, all the while, is still in a medically induced coma. Her organs had begun shutting down. Once Elizabeth got well enough, they would dress her in a nurse's uniform and sneak her into the hospital past press so that she could be with her daughter by her bedside. And she was just so unrecognizable.
Oh, I'm sure.
It passed. When she first entered the hospital, they had a priest read Kirsten her last rites, if that's any indication to the layman how close to death she was. She was 20 years old at this point. 20 years without full oxygen, sunlight, basically the necessities required for a human to function. Now, within 2 weeks, the children, the other ones, had and began to improve. Their skin tone had improved. Their health was improving. They still struggled mentally, and long after the body heals, the mind still can be emotionally ill, and it would be a long road for the children. The boys would spend hours in the shipping container that was brought for their comfort. Part of the treatment was reducing time with Elizabeth so that they could learn to function independently for when they could rejoin the real world. But that was extremely difficult and a heartbreaking endeavor.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, ain't nobody going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Let me just be a heartless fucking son of a bitch. This pale ass kid, you know. Just found out McDonald's is a real thing.
He getting all the nuggies.
While they were improving, they were not ready for society. The upstairs children were biting to get back to their normal day. They wanted to go back to school. They wanted to go back to their friends. But of course, with the press attention and the gossip, it made it impossible for them to leave their home. The dichotomy of the downstairs children trying to gain their freedom while the upstairs children lost theirs is quite stark. The press was relentless, like press usually is, but this time on an international scale with little respect to Austrian culture. Because, like, you know, you mind your business. And even if you are an Austrian journalist, there were lines. Well, now you have British journalists and American journalists and all these other journalists that don't give a fuck. Like, American, listen, Princess Diana.
Yeah.
That's all you got to say right there.
Right there.
Shit. But I digress. There was a $1.5 million bounty on the first picture of Elizabeth post-dungeon life. $1.5 million. You know how many people's lives could be saved with that? For a picture of a woman.
You know, it's disgusting, but I would try to get the picture. I could do a lot of things with $1.5 million.
Listen, that's really truly the thing, though. Like, if what someone was saying the other day, two people can keep a secret if one of them's dead. So the authorities ended up bringing in a Austrian anti-terrorism Cobra Force. That's the title. Austrian anti-terrorism Cobra Force to help put the reporters at bay. And I'm pretty sure a 12-year-old boy came up with that name.
I'm pretty sure he did, and I kind of want to join.
Yeah. It was so fucking out of hand. People who were neighbors of the Fritzls were literally renting out their balconies so the press could get photos. Oh, but the reason I was saying that thing about the two people keeping a secret is that, like, people, if they need money,
They'll do anything.
they'll do anything. And you'll be surprised what people will do for $10. Okay?
I don't think I would. I work in prison.
And then you put $10 million on the table.
I've seen people do things for honey buns that would shock your mind.
Listen, Becky, I want you to know right now, if someone said, you have to slap your best friend, but I'll give you $1 billion, I'd be like, you slapped me twice.
You got
$1 billion for you and $1 billion for me.
You right.
Like, pow, pow. And I want you to put some heat in it. You know what I mean? Put that weight in it, you know?
Like, I don't know why you did it, Jen, but I know it was for a good reason.
It's good for a good reason.
I'll send you my bills.
Try as they might, they got nothing. And if you look now, you won't find anything but pictures of Elizabeth in her youth, Fritzl and his wife, and some of the upstairs children at best. And it's not even like the second wave of the upstairs children. It's the first wave, like Elizabeth's siblings. You can't even find a photo of Kirsten in the hospital, which was on the news. So I assumed if that was on the news somewhere, it would be. And I'm sure if I was better, I probably could find it, but I did not find it.
I just want to see what she looked like, even if it was an old picture.
They have one where they have a drawing of her, what they think she looks like when she came out of the basement. And it does favor her younger photos. She was a beautiful girl. Beautiful soul.
Yes.
By May 4th, Joseph was in solitary confinement. He had admitted to his cellmate that he did keep his daughter in a dungeon as a sex slave, and of course, his cellmate threatened his life.
Of course.
I don't know what he thought he was doing by bragging about that.
Thought they were going to bond.
He's like, you know what? That's what I did with my daughter, too. Dog, no.
Samesies.
This is not we share the same birthday situation. By this time, a jail psychiatrist would determine he had schizophrenia, and Meyer was most certainly working on the insanity defense, as his client did not choose to do this. It is most certainly his mental illness that caused this. And as my podcast idol Marcus Park says, mental illness is not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Preach.
Elizabeth and her children would have an attorney represent them, making statements on their behalf as far as the progress on the family. And I'm glad that they did. It was really quite clever to have that to protect them. Because even law enforcement, they do a great job. But you gotta think like an attorney, and all of them are slimy. You might as well hire one.
True.
Might as well have one on your side.
Yeah.
He stated, of course, there was progress, but as the doctor stated, there would be a honeymoon phase after this event, and that the real test was yet to come, but that they were confident that they would survive. Dr. Keith Abloh would speak on the recovery. I think the road could be tremendously difficult, and it may not be possible to navigate it for each of these individuals. But think back to the Holocaust. There were kids raised in concentration camps that went on to be free, to marry, to have careers, and to experience the joys in life. And so it's quite possible and worth the effort. And I really did love that.
I do too.
Because there's anything in my research for World War II, there are all these people who have survived and are able to speak on it and talk about it. Even watching videos of the Nuremberg trials where these people were describing what Nazis had done. One woman was in a firing squad and they missed her and she fell down and pretended she was dead. While she heard people in the throes of death, the death rattles, the twitches, as they were going through and finishing, anybody was making noises. And the way that woman stood there and was able to relay that story was the strength that it probably took was insane.
Yeah.
They went on to speak about Kirsten's improvement. While not out of the woods, she was certainly improving, so they would begin decreasing her medications to take her out of her coma. They were concerned that she may have already been raped by Joseph, but since she was under, they couldn't know for sure, nor could they look into that because she was not conscious. So, there's consent required for a lot of things, friends, even in medical. Joseph's lawyer would interview him about his life and then release his story to public in a sort of PR approach to help concrete the insanity defense. He would talk about Elizabeth being his second wife, insisting that he had sex with her for the first time in 1985. And that he just couldn't control it any longer and went downstairs and laid her on the bed and had sex with her. And he said he knew Elizabeth didn't want it, but she didn't resist either. Why does that matter? Why? What? Anyways, he denied Elizabeth's claims that he had her chained to the wall, saying that he knew she couldn't escape. So what was the point?
Didn't need to chain the bitch up. I had a 600-pound door. Hello, guys.
Yeah. He did bring the 3 children upstairs to live with Rosemary as they were sickly, and while Elizabeth was a good housewife and mother, Rosemary was the best mother in the world. So,
at least he had something positive to say about her, right?
For once.
For once.
He would downplay his control and pretend that the children going upstairs was a joint idea, as if they were a normal married couple who were parents making decisions about their children.
Get the fuck out of here.
I mean, right? What blew my mind is how he acted like he was some magnanimous husband. After Felix was born in 2002, he brought her a washing machine so she wouldn't have to hand wash her clothes anymore.
So sweet.
And that he brought a tree and Christmas presents and cakes and photos of the upstairs children. All like this was normal.
He makes me mad.
Listen. If I serve you a pancake with shit on it, it's still shit.
It is.
It's just dressed up.
Yep.
Okay. You can put a Christmas tree in a dungeon, but it's still a dungeon. Meyer would ask if he thought the cellar adversely affected his second family's health, and he responded, yeah, sure. Elizabeth stayed strong. She caused me almost no problems. She never, ever complained, even when her teeth slowly went rotten and fell out of her mouth one after the other, and she suffered day and night with unbearable pain and could not sleep. She stayed strong for the children, but I saw the children were constantly getting weaker. The things that comes out of this man's mouth.
It's just mind-boggling.
He would also state that he wanted to let them go, and he was just getting older, and it was just too difficult. And then Kirsten just had sped up the timeline, and that he had already planned on it. So you guys just chill.
Just chill.
Like, for real. Like, I was already doing it. Like, oh. I was doing it out of the goodness of my heart. He would chillingly state that if he had no intentions of releasing them, he could have just let them die in the cellar and no one would be any wiser. And honestly, I think that's what his intention was a lot of the time. And I think that the only thing that did is he did weirdly somehow love his children and weirdly somehow love her like actual wife. And I think that's the only thing that saved them. It was like the last drop of humanity this man must have had.
Yeah.
All I could think, because
or he knew he would never be able to dispose of all the bodies at his age. And
honestly, I don't think he probably would have ever brought him up ground. I think he would eventually let him just starve to death.
Yeah.
He would go on to discuss, Joseph would, that his mother had him as an alibi child to show his father that Joseph's mother wasn't barren. His father was just a waste. It was just him and his mother for his whole life, and that she had never raped him. Nor did they have sex, though he had thought about it. The fact that, like, he thinks that because he didn't have sex with his mother, or he waited to, or like held off for as long as he did to have sex with Elizabeth, that he is some kind of saint.
Yeah.
Sir, nobody is biting at the bit to fuck their mom.
Mm-mm.
Just you.
Just you.
Things I never thought would come out of my mouth. You know what I mean? He did take on that Nazi thinking, in his opinion, of utmost loyalty and respect authority, something that he had subconsciously brought into his adulthood and parenting style. He had no clue why he raped the nurse or why he was sexually deviant. He just wanted to be a good husband and a good father, wanting loads of children so that he would not be alone like he was, a single child with a single mother. He wanted his children to have each other for support for, when he raped them,
yeah,
or beat them,
yeah,
or verbally assaulted them,
yeah,
or starved them,
yeah.
He would become more cooperative with the police finally, answering their questions, but with this ridiculous fucking version of the story. The good news is that the Austrian parliament had begun talks on sex offender laws, that the 15-year statute, the adoption process that allowed him to take on these children, all these things that were conducive to his secret were going to get changed.
You think?
I did love that once it did come out in papers, they did the opposite of what he had hoped. He was called delusional, and headlines like, I lusted after my mother, and I could have killed them all, plastered above photos of his many vacations on the beach and his various fucking signature Speedos. You set yourself up for it.
You did.
If you're in your
They're
60s
just knocking him down.
And you're in a Speedo on a beach in Thailand, you're asking for it, bitch.
Asking for it.
Ain't nobody. Speedos, unless you're an Olympic diver,
Don't
nobody
need 'em on.
has a need for it. The police were nearing completion of their extremely extensive investigation, and they had surmised a few things. Absolutely no booby traps, period. The immensely large, detailed, and highly organized paper trail, which showed he was receiving $60,000 in legal Austrian benefits for 3 children.
Oof.
2 weeks after they were released, this was annually that he would get them.
Yeah.
60,000. Crazy. 2 weeks after they were released from their dungeon, Elizabeth, Rosemary, and all the children sat down for Mother's Day dinner. Still all staying within the clinic, but their attorney would give some news. That despite the reports of Elizabeth being a shadow of a woman, she was still quite beautiful and now quite happy to be free, and that she was extremely resilient for her children, and that they were progressing. Felix was able to see rain for the first time.
Oh, wow.
They noted how the concept of play was foreign to Stefan and Felix, and that they had to be taught how to play. Felix was doing far better at opening up to it, but Stefan would spend much of his time just watching the fish tank he had done so many years before. And to me, that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, like the brain damage he probably ended up having because of the lack of oxygen and vitamins and everything and stimuli, that fish tank was all he had.
Yeah.
Each of them had their own special set of circumstances to overcome and learn, from climbing stairs to being completely immunized.
Yeah.
Their attorney would plead with the press to please back the fuck off. Probably a drug quote, I don't know.
Probably.
As they were effectively imprisoning them again since they could not go outside in peace.
Yeah. Oh my God, they are. Jesus Christ. I didn't even think of it like that. But that's exactly what you're doing. They were already prisoners. Please leave them alone.
Except this time, they'll have all these cameras at you.
Yeah, that you don't even understand what the fuck's going on.
Like aliens. Everything alien. Being cooped up, the upstairs children did become frustrated and started to resent their siblings who needed the ultra quiet and calm to heal. The doctors would speak on the contrast of how each set viewed things. Like a cloud to one set is astonishing while the other think it's boring.
Yeah.
So like having the commonalities was really difficult. They spent time together healing, watching movies, visiting Kirsten, and reading many, many cards and letters from people around the world wishing them well. Which, I mean, honestly, I don't think you guys realize how much a positive word can mean to someone's day. If you don't think so, pick out a stranger, say something nice to them, see what happens.
Yeah.
Being so moved, the family made a poster with the message written by Elizabeth. We, the whole family, would like to use this opportunity to thank you for sympathizing with our fate. Your empathy is helping us go through these difficult times, and it shows us that there are good and honest people. We hope there will be a time when we can return to normal life. There would also be outlines of handprints from all the kids drawn with their like little wishes and misses. The upstairs kids were missing their friends in school. The downstairs children enjoying the fresh air and nature. Both mothers wishing for health and strength and healing. But my favorite was that all of them noted both sets of children loved and missed Kirsten and wished for her recovery.
That's sweet.
So they all put that on that little poster. My most favorite but heartbreaking one was Felix. I dream of playing with other children, running in the meadows, riding in cars, playing ball, swimming, sleigh rides, and playing with other children. Playing with other children. He had to say that twice.
He just wanted a friend.
With no one knowing exactly what they looked like, and truly all looked very normal, they were able to disguise themselves a few times to take the children to the park, just to get out there. Stefan and Felix would be enamored by the lake, by the park, the foliage, and Felix decided right then and there he wanted to be a gardener when he grew up. And I thought that was the sweetest thing in the whole world. They took him for his first Happy Meal. He had seen McDonald's commercials, but they told him it was a made-up thing, not a real place. So when he got a fucking Happy Meal, he was fucking ecstatic.
Oh, I bet.
They did get invited by the then California governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as his personal guest to come visit him. He would say that these children had been in prison all their lives, and he wanted to do something. He said, "Can you imagine how they react to Disneyland or a trip to Universal Studios?
First
These kids would have strokes."
I think it's fucking amazing, and I'm mesmerized, and I
never been in a dungeon.
Yeah,
I would have a heart attack. On May 15th, Kirsten would open her eyes for the first time. Her mother had been by her side for most of the time, as doctors were worried how she would react when she'd see strangers, as she'd only ever seen her mother, Josef, and her siblings. However, Elizabeth was not there, but thankfully Kirsten reacted well as Elizabeth rushed to reunite with her. Dr. Reiter would happen to just notice her eyes open and see her smile when he was in the room doing like a kind of view of her. They were worried about brain damage, but as she woke up and interacted with her mother, they were relieved that there was no signs of damage. It would take a month before the breathing tube could be removed. Shortly after waking up, the hospital staff would give her a CD player and CD of music by popular British singer Robbie Williams. She loved the music, getting so riled up she was caught dancing with the breathing tube attached, which they begrudgingly had her stop. She needed a rest before she could do the tango. And I'm like, recently people have been joking about Robbie Williams. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
British pop star. And he had some hits in the 90s in the US, not many, like one or two. But he apparently super, super really big over in the UK. Well, he had a movie done about himself, like a biography, but instead of it being him, it's like a chimp or something. And then Paramount paid like a bajillion dollars to have it licensed so it can be played here, but nobody knows who Robbie Williams is here. Like nobody really listens to his music here. So they just lost a shit ton of money. And people are just sitting there going like, but we don't know who Robbie Williams is. And I had already read this story and going like, y'all just don't know what that man did for this little girl right here. Just by being a singer.
Yeah.
Just by doing something he loved. So don't stop doing what you love, because one day could be a little girl in a hospital bed that might have been in a dungeon enjoying your music
Or podcast.
or podcast. There we go. If you are in a dungeon, though, I'm holding my fist up in solidarity. And I hope you get out. Seriously. For real. I don't know how to do that without sounding like I'm joking. Awkward.
Just stop talking.
I can't do that, dude. I can't. So on June 1st, they would remove the tube, and Dr. Reiter would say, "Hello, Kirsten," to which she would smile and return a small hello. She would need to learn how to talk, breathe, eat, walk, everything. She had been in bed so long that she needed to get her moving in to avoid muscle loss and atrophy. Her mother was her personal coach, cheering her on and helping her take strides in healing. Eventually, she would be released from intensive care with a new CD player and even more Robbie Williams CDs, as she had become a huge fan.
That's adorable.
The family would move into a villa on the grounds of the clinic they were staying at. Rosemary would return home for the first time to the Eve Strauss since the crimes had broke, to gather a couple personal items for the family, taking a walk through the cellar where her daughter had been all those years.
Oof, I don't know if I could.
I don't know either. During this time, news came that Joseph was having health issues, not mental issues.
Oh, sad.
He was already having mental issues. We all knew that when he
The whole
started wanting
time.
to fuck his mom when he was like 7.
Yeah.
Woo! They thought that he might not make it to trial. The authorities were waiting till the family was well enough to give their statements. But upon hearing this, Elizabeth insisted on getting interviews done so that her father could not evade justice.
Amen.
Which I thought was very interesting, because I know the legal system here works slow, but the fact that they were really trying to give it time for them,
Yeah.
that was actually highly respectable. They wanted Stefan and Kirsten to testify, but they both refused, as is their right. She did a video deposition, so she did not have to see her father again, detailing what he had done to her, how he would punish the children, the cruelty they endured, and how he oppressed them. Elizabeth ended up hiring a second lawyer to handle the massive media intrusion. She released a statement asking that the details of what she and her children had endured would not be released to the media, and that all she wanted was to live in freedom with her children. Then came the issues of what to charge. Like I said before, this was like the charges he had were like short and not really reflective of what he had done. And this case set a lot of precedents. No one wanted to see Joseph ever free to walk the streets again, but they really didn't have anything like fucking like America does. America wants you jaywalk, and we want to put you away for life, okay?
Right.
They looked at a murder charge because he never got help for baby Michael. They looked at rape, incest, even an obscure 17th century Austrian law on slavery. Like, they were working really hard and diligently to find a way to keep him behind bars. Less than a month after the deposition, Elizabeth would reportedly throw Rosemary out of the villa. She rightfully had questions about how much her mother truly knew, why she stayed after his rape conviction, why she never protected her or her siblings. At this point, evidence had come from documents Joseph kept detailing the horrific rape of another one of Rosemary's sisters, who never was named. She demanded that her mother would divorce Joseph, and Rosemary did. Eventually, they did somewhat reconcile, with Rosemary living separate and the children recognizing Elizabeth as their mother and Rosemary as their grandmother. Joseph would go to trial pleading guilty to all charges but murder. He covered, I love this, there's so many pictures of this. He held a binder, like a 3-ring binder, up at his face like that was gonna, like nobody knew what he fucking looked like.
Yeah.
They were taking pictures of him going to the courtroom. Like, sir, the bald spot was telling. Christine had already called it.
Just stop, sir.
On the second day of trial, the day they were playing Elizabeth's deposition, Elizabeth came to the trial sitting in the galley. Seeing his daughter, his face went pale, as reported by his attorney. The next day, he changed his plea to all guilty and accepted a sentence of 15 years to life and stated he would not appeal. In 2013, the Austrian government sealed the basement with concrete, and by 2015, after trouble finding a buyer for the home that was listed for €2,000, the city of
Wait. The whole house was for sale for €2,000?
200,000, excuse me.
Okay. I was like, and nobody was like, fuck it, for $2,000, I'll get it?
No, for 200,000.
Okay.
The city was about to use it for to host asylum seekers, and then they were finally able to sell it for €160,000 to a fire party who turned it into 10 apartments. the rooftop terrace is still there, though all that remains of the cellar is the original set of stairs in the one room.
Wow.
An actual cellar. If you're wondering if Joseph ever showed remorse, he really didn't. In March 2019, Mark Perry, a British journalist who interviewed Fritzl in jail, said he showed no remorse for his crimes, recalling that he kept saying, "Just look into the cellars of other people. You might find other families and girls down there." Since then, he went into the psychiatric unit where he stayed until this year, or until 2024 when I wrote this. As his dementia and physical age made him less of a danger, so they put him back into a regular prison on a 10-year probationary period. Prosecutors have appealed this decision for the move starting in 2021. At this point, he changed his name from Fritzl to Mayeroff, like nobody was going to know.
Right?
Like that was going to do a damn thing. Joseph applied for a nursing home release in January of 2024, and of course, he was quickly denied. I bet their first question was like, after saying that he's and I was like, I bet it had a basement, didn't it? I bet it had a cellar. A statement from the court said the 3-judge panel ruled that a conditional release from regular custody, i.e. being freed, is not possible for special preventative reasons. The statement said, referring to the unprecedented criminal energy he used.
I'm here for the words criminal energy.
Unprecedented. After 10 years, also 10 years from now, he will be 99. So let's just hope that the fires of hell are raping him by then. But then again, sometimes people are so evil that the devil don't even want them. Elizabeth and her children have different identities, living in an unnamed small town in Austria. She is said to be dating one of her personal security, which isn't a for sure thing, but regardless, I wish her all the love and kindness in the world. Her children have returned to school, and it all seems they have all bonded well together and lived through the trauma. What's her life like now? Let's hope it remains their own secret, as they're entitled to privacy, but most importantly, I hope it's wonderful.
Me
That's
too.
the story of Elizabeth Fritzl and her harrowing 24 years below ground.
And I hope those kiddos get chicky nuggies whenever they want them.
Whenever. I hope they get all the MSG they could ever ask for.
And the next time that Emma acts like she don't get everything she wants, go and sit her down and listen to this podcast.
Let me tell you what could have happened. You could have been just sitting here with just a fish tank. Just a fish tank. Whenever I get mad at Camilla, I'm like, you do realize that everything in here is a privilege, right? I was like, all I got to do is give you a bed, which could be a mattress on the floor. I can give you just a bare enough clothes to get you to school and back, enough pajamas, enough underwear, and that's all you need, baby. As long as I feed you, clothe you, put you in a home, that's I've hate my obligations.
Does she look at you and say, "You would never"?
No, she go, I know, Mom, I know.
Emma would look at me like, bitch, please.
Camilla is so much like Jimmy, though.
Yeah.
It's that she'll have an attitude and she'll rise up, but she comes down real quick because if there's any asshole in this house, it's this one right here.
I told you she was at the house one day. Two of the other children there were having a disagreement. And there were no raised voices. There were no yelling. It was literally just a disagreement. And then all of a sudden I hear Camilla out of nowhere, guys, let's stop fighting. Everybody calm down. And I was like, okay, Jimmy.
Everybody, you're at a 10. I need to bring it to a 2.
I'm like, they are on a 2. But Camilla wants you guys on a 0.
Camilla's like, this is too much confrontation. I can't handle it. Well, you guys, don't forget to find us on our socials. Check out our merch. Find her out. Tell us about your own Too Close to Home stories. And most importantly, don't forget to rate and subscribe on all platforms you listen to. Because then maybe we might get famous and we could be like super professional and we could with this.
Ride on a parked yacht.
Oh my God. I've been watching so this is what happened. Becky got me into the show The Traitors. And the first season, Kate Chastain from Below Deck is on. Well, I hated Kate, so I needed to watch her show. Hate watch, if you will. And then I fell in love with her because she's my, like, the energy that I hope to have in my life. Of the amount of, like, she just tells it like it is.
She does. All day, every day.
All day, every day. Why was I saying that? Oh, because it's on a yacht.
Yes.
But I do know now what I do want on a yacht and what I do not want on a yacht.
Like it's yacht shopping next week.
Like literally, I don't think we could have staff. Except for the ones that do the boating, like the parts, with the boat parts, like the actual functioning of the ship. You're not cooking me food. I don't know where you are. Like one guy, he's he likes to do yoga, and he's like very much like he found out he was having a new roommate, and you know what he did? He went and got incense to smudge in the room. I was like, no, I don't need anybody like that doing my food right now.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes you don't even know how that sausage is made.
If you do not, don't peek behind the curtain.
Well, until next time, you guys.
Stay safe.
Keep your head on a swivel.
And don't bring it too close to home and have a dungeon that you lock your family in.
Yeah, please
That's
don't
not
do that.
cool.
It's not cool, fam.
Not cool. It's not a vibe.
Not a vibe.
No cap.
Oh, God.
Skibbity-doo.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.